All right, everybody, we are back with another speaker interview for the Memphis Global AI Community Bootcamp. Tonight, my guest is Mr. Bill Wilder from the Boston, Massachusetts area. Bill, thank you for speaking with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Douglas.
Before we get started, do want to tell everybody that the Memphis Global AI Community Bootcamp is going to be Friday, April 25th. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central U.S. time. I'll drop this link down in the description below, but this is the shortened link to RSVP. It's going to be streamed live on YouTube. We have, let me switch over real quick here. We have two tracks, track A and track I. So we've got 10 different talks. So be sure to take a look at the schedule because you have some decisions to make. Bill, however, is going to be doing a talk called Human Language is the New UI, How This is Possible. But first, Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I grew up as a software developer, computer science background, so I've been cranking software for a lot of years. And in the early days of Azure, I started to pay a lot of attention to that. I was at the PDC when Ray Ozzie announced it on stage.
Wow.
And I started the Boston Azure group within a year of that. And we were the first Azure community group that sprung up. Cool. And we did that. So I did that. And Veronica Kolesnikova and Jason Haley are also doing it these days with me. And we rebranded it in January after a little more than 15 years to be Boston Azure AI, because that represents what I'm doing, certainly, and what Jason and Veronica are also doing, which is focusing a lot on AI. And the AI happens to often be on Azure, but the emphasis is AI, and that's what I do. I'm actually in a hotel room right now in Georgia. I'll be delivering some AI training tomorrow.
Cool. I'm actually thinking of stealing that idea. I started a Memphis Azure user group, but and the reason why is because my Python user group that I run was becoming an AI user group, was becoming an Azure user group, and now I'm thinking about just going the full Azure AI route because there's so much you can do with it, and that's what's hot.
We run events that have no. They're not AI topics, and people don't attend.
Yeah.
The oxygen in the room is almost entirely taken up by AI. So we do overlaps. For example, we have cybersecurity as one of my personal interests and focuses, but we have a talk coming up that's going to be on cybersecurity side of LLMs and agents, right? So like the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, and what does it look like to be attacked on as a application using an LLM internally, stuff like that. So we find those overlap topics are having a lot of more traction. So if you want to get somebody's attention, make sure AI is at least somewhere.
Exactly. So let's talk about the talk for just a minute here. Again, human language is the new UI, how this is possible.
So everybody's probably noticed that that ChatGPT allows you to talk with human language, and it understands it. Or I'll use the air quotes once, but I won't do it. It simulates human language understanding. At least you can say simulates it. And for me, I've been on a pretty intense AI journey for the last more than a year, pouring thousands of hours of learning time into reskilling to do the AI work I'm interested in doing. And part of that learning experience was this idea of what the AI community would call an embedding model,
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk, and this will be part of the talk, but if you go to a model catalog anywhere on Azure AI Foundry or Hugging Face and some other
Mm-hmm.
systems have, like, here's a zillion models to choose from, and most of them will be LLM models. They'll
Mm-hmm.
be very focused on the language, and some might be image models. And then some other interesting ones like a guard model, a security model, like one that looks for bad content. It's a
Mm-hmm.
specialized model. But another one is this embedding model, and it's a model that's specifically designed to take something. And I'm going to, in the talk at the bootcamp you're hosting,
Mm-hmm.
my focus is going to be on text. And but there are other possible. You could also talk about the meaning of. You could have a betting model for images
Mm-hmm.
or audio or so forth. And actually, Boston Azure AI has a session coming up with Alan Smith, who's going to talk about doing that something similar to that for with music and
Oh,
audio.
cool.
So it's pretty interesting.
It's actually my degree.
What's that?
I said that's actually my degree, and I've been very interested in AI and music.
So it is a fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
huge topic. So
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing, or one of the like zooming in on one of the more interesting parts of this topic is you could take any text up to a certain length. We'll talk about that
Mm-hmm.
in the talk, and it could be a word or a syllable or a token. We'll explain that too,
Mm-hmm.
or sentence or something or paragraph and and um, and transform it into a series of floating point numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of this model that we'll use in the demonstrations at your community bootcamp, that will be a 3072 dimension vector, 3072 floating point numbers
Mm-hmm.
that represent the semantic content of that
Mm-hmm.
word, phrase, sentence, whatever that you gave it. And that is so powerful. And first of all, you just pause there and say, "What? Like, how is this possible?" And that's the purpose of the talk,
Right.
right? Because it comes from. It wasn't a data scientist sitting down and saying, "Okay, what are the values for cat?" Right? It
Mm-hmm.
was done because we have the whole internet to train on,
Mm-hmm.
and we can look for words that commonly go together or are rarely seen together, and we can learn something about that and bake it into a model that can be used to do the process that I'm talking about, which is take some arbitrary text and turn it into one of these 3,000 plus dimension vectors.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you can do that? The interesting thing is that once you've done that, you have these vector representations, you can compare them.
Mm-hmm.
So we can so as a very simple example, we can ask if how similar does the math say that the expression baby dog is
Mm-hmm.
to the word puppy,
Right.
and they'll come out, and we usually talk in terms of a number between 0 and 1. This negative
Mm-hmm.
is in the conversation too, but that's unusual. But for dog and puppy, it would be, let's say, a 0.8 correlation. So
Mm-hmm.
wow, those are pretty close. And then we'll go off in a bunch of different directions. It can also do code. It can also do other human languages. You can ask it to compare the French phrase for baby dog with
Mm-hmm.
the English phrase for dog, or the Spanish word for dog. You
Right.
cross languages here, as long as it doesn't have context to say that this is French and this is
Mm-hmm.
Spanish, say, and it will get a similar correlation score of, like, say, 0.8. So that's the point of the talk, to help people get a glimpse of what's going on behind the scenes and understand it a little bit, because this has interesting implications in, for example, RAG, where RAG is a pattern where you do, in the background, you do a semantic search for
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's like what I'm searching for. So if I'm searching for cottage in the text,
Mm-hmm.
I might, if we were doing a literal search for cottage and the word cottage doesn't appear, maybe cottage is, this stemming stuff that's been around
Right.
for ages, but you might find that, but you probably wouldn't, with old school techniques, you wouldn't find house
Mm-hmm.
or uh, shed, or shed
Right.
is it would have a lower score in the matching,
Right.
might be a 0.6 or something,
Right.
but it's still a relevant thing. So if you're searching through paragraphs or blocks of data that your enterprise has, or even just for example, that's actually a good example. Maybe you have a parts catalog
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking for something that's that's hinge like, and maybe they don't use the exact words, but it can
Right.
still find it through this semantic search, and it can find words that, like I said, aren't lexically tied.
Mm-hmm.
House and cottage have no, you they only semantically match, and that's what this can do for you.
Yeah, and from reading the description, you point out that even though you mentioned math earlier, that there's no math in the talk, and that it seems to be and while it is about a technical topic, it's aimed really at all kinds of audiences.
That's right. Yeah, I do. I'll mention that there's a 3,000 plus dimension vector, and I'll
Mhm.
briefly give some intuitive sense of what a vector is for those who don't know, and I'll but leave it there, right? But the math itself, if we get into the math, it isn't terribly advanced. It's
Mhm.
there's a technique called cosine similarity
Right.
analysis that a, a, a basic course in, say, linear algebra or maybe a physics
Mhm.
course would cover that technique. It's not hard, but it's unnecessary to understand the contents of the talk.
All right, so it's but I guess what I'm saying is that it's more conceptual. I guess
Yeah.
is what I was saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll tie it back to some of these well-known concepts like cosine similarity analysis, for example, and that's some vector math. We'll mention that. We just won't crunch the
Mhm.
numbers, together.
Great. Well, that sounds like it's going to be interesting. If you want to, again, the talk is Human Language is the New UI, how this is possible. And you're going to be at 10:10 a.m. Central Time in Track A. We have the two tracks, Track A and Track I. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with this evening?
Um, well, if you want more, so we talked a little bit about Boston Azure AI.
Right.
Boston Azure AI has a dual audience focus. That's worth pointing out. We run in-person events for the greater Boston community, but we also have many online events. And
Okay.
if you want to check those out, you can check us out at the URL on screen there, bostonazureai.org. And you tap in virtually, so you can be anywhere. Other than that, I look forward to your the Memphis Global AI Community Bootcamp, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
And we're looking forward to having you speak. We've got a good number of RSVPs online. If you want to connect with Bill, learn more about him. He is on LinkedIn. He is also on Twitter/X at Coding Out Loud, and his blog codingoutloud.com. So one more time, Memphis Global AI Community Bootcamp. It's going to be April 25th. That is Friday of next week, and you can go here to RSVP. So, Bill, thank you very much for speaking with us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me, Douglas. See everybody at
Thank
the
you.
bootcamp.